Former President Jacob Zuma will this morning find out whether or not he'll be granted a postponement in his corruption trial. This is after his lawyers argued that hearing the matter virtually instead of him being in court in person would prejudice his rights to a fair trial. But the National Prosecuting Authority says this is the latest chapter in Zuma's Stalingrad strategy to delay facing his day in court. Newzroom Afrika's senior politics reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo is watching developments for us. She's live to us from Pietermaritzburg this morning. And Ziyanda, I guess that is where the rubber hits the road, right? Will the former president be prejudiced if these proceedings continue virtually?
Well, Ayanda, that's what we're going to hear at 10 o'clock this morning when Judge Piet Koen hands down that judgment. He has said that the judgment may not actually have an explanation, and I suppose that's due to the time limitations, and he would have only had overnight to apply his mind to the arguments that were made by both legal teams. But in essence, Ayanda, the former president's lawyers, represented by Advocate Dalimpofu as well as Thabani Masuku, were arguing that, look, we could not have foreseen the unrest that's taken place in the country, as well as the incarceration of former President Jacob Zuma. So we haven't had access to our clients due to the lockdown regulations as well. But interestingly, Ayanda, they've had a meeting with the former president at Escort last Thursday, and that's according to what the Jacob Zuma Foundation actually tweeted, that he was meeting with his legal team there. So very interesting, the arguments that were made. In particular as well, the argument made by Mpofu saying that, look, when he was asked how long do you want to postpone for, he told Judge Piet Koen that probably around 2 to 3 weeks, because they're anticipating that the Constitutional Court would also hand down the judgment on that rescission application. He seemed to have taken a jab saying at the Court, saying, well, they seem to be prioritizing this case, so around about 2 to 3 weeks we should know. And I think what he was trying to do there was to actually say, a lot of how much access they have to their client will hinge on whether or not they're successful in their application. But I think, one of the questions that still remains is, well, let's just say the Constitutional Court then denies the application to rescind that jail term sentence. What does it mean then for, Zuma's legal team and them having access to him? Because, Advocate Wim Trengove, who is representing the NPA, was saying, well, Mr. Zuma was part of the proceedings yesterday. His presence is no different to that of the lawyers who were part of the virtual proceedings. And so there's no reason why he wouldn't be present or would be prejudiced, because in the same way he's part of today's proceedings, which was yesterday, he'd also be there when that special plea to have Billy Downer recuse himself is heard. But, Thabani Masuku arguing that, well, how are we going to consult with our client? I mean, consulting with him from Escort using someone else's phone is violating his privacy and his dignity. But also, why is the NPA in such a rush to forge ahead with this matter, given the fact that this Pietermaritzburg High Court remains closed, Ayanda? Other matters have been put on hold as a result of those lockdown regulations. And so Masuku arguing that why is Mr. Zuma being treated, in a special manner. But as well, the NPA saying that, look, and I mean, one of the quotables, I suppose, that came from Wim Trengove, he said, this is yet another chapter in Mr. Zuma's Stalingrad approach, season 27. So basically, this is a never-ending saga, and actually the arguments that Zuma makes, you don't even need oral evidence, because these are arguments that he's made before. I mean, Wim Trengove said that 135 paragraphs in his special plea to have Billy Downer recuse himself are literal copy and paste from Zuma's application for leave to appeal at the Constitutional Court in this matter. So certainly Judge Piet Koen had to consider several factors when considering whether or not this trial can continue virtually.
Plenty to think about in the 3 hours, 45 minutes, if my math is anything to go by. Ziyanda Ngcobo, thanks very much indeed. We'll speak to you once again, no doubt, throughout the course of the morning.